Welcome to the Req Room with Mandy and Mio, a podcast about books and the people who write them.
Welcome. We're here now in the Req Room. Yo,
Yeah.
Req Room.
I didn't know where you were going.
But you guys know this is the Req Room. So I made it sound like there was like a hype. I made it sound like there was a hype man in the Req Room. When you open the doors.
You were making it sound like we had people here.
No, when it's literally just us every time.
It's us.
every 2
day.
weeks you come into the room and you
weeks.
check if there's anyone new and
I know.
please to report it's literally just us.
No, just us. Only us.
Yeah. But what I was trying to set up is that this is a podcast called The Req Room with Mandy and Mio. This is a podcast where we ask the question, when does a writer's work become required reading? In each episode, we take popular authors of the day and review each entry in their bibliographies to see just how close these writers get to the sweet spot between mainstream breakout success and traditional literary sensibility. My name is Mio.
And I'm Mandy.
And we are talking about the works of Madeline Miller. And this is our second episode on her. Last time we talked about The Song of Achilles, her first book, which was this huge success. And it became an especially iconic cult classic on sites like Tumblr, where it was sort of at the forefront of I guess fandom culture. We were saying, Mandy, your experience with it was that you kind of got exposed to it through Tumblr, and then it was an interesting contrast for when we formally experienced it through our studies. But her second book is a little less it's treading less familiar territory, I would say, because her second book is Circe, right? And
absolutely,
Circe came out not too long ago, 2017, I think, and interestingly enough...
Was that only 2017?
I feel like it's 2017, 2018.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was 2018.
Yeah, it's around that time, not that long ago. And in fact, it helps us to launch into this very interesting thing that we've been holding back about Madeline until now. Because
Indeed.
Of all the authors we've covered on this podcast so far, Madeline Miller... is an author I've actually met in person.
Hells?
Oh,
yeah.
So this is the legend.
Pew, 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 pew.
So we're gonna briefly go into the legend.
This story, though.
Yeah, this is a very long-winded story that ends in Mandy kind of getting mad at me, and you'll find out why. It's a really I promise you okay, one thing. So if you guys don't know who Mandy and Mio are,
who we are.
So one thing you need to know straight up about our dynamic is that I love to prank. I love playing practical jokes on Mandy.
It's just pranks.
Pranks on Mandy, practical. But they're very wholesome. I don't
These are all one-sided pranks, by the way.
Yeah, I
have never once attempted
wholesome pranks.
To prank back. They're wholesome one-sided pranks.
Some of the pranks were when we convinced the entire school to dunk on you because
I know. That was so bad.
Yeah.
You did that to me twice.
Yeah. We convinced an entire university to dunk on her because everyone knew that Les Mis was her favorite thing in the world. That's a story for another time, of course. What I'm here to tell is...
Sorry, 3 times. I'm thinking of 3 times that you did that.
Right. Well, the practical joke that we're thinking of this time...
This was the best one. I will have to say that this is one of your top 3 best ones that I would I forgive.
Well, I think we've set it up enough. Let's go into the story. So I mentioned, I think in the first episode when we were talking about conversations with friends, that for a year I was studying in the UK. I was studying a creative writing program, and one of the perks of that creative writing program was that because the university was very invested in literary events. I went to University of East Anglia. Every year there was a literary festival that came through. And during one of the terms where I was okay, maybe I didn't really go to the literary festival last term, I'll do it now this term. And so I went, and it turned out that year one of the guests on the literary festival was Madeline Miller, promoting her new novel Circe. And okay, let me say up front, I had told you about this. Like, I had told you that she was coming.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Right?
Because I remember being excited.
So part of me was like, because I had told you that she was coming, it was kind of fair game for me to play.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Because when the thing happened, it wasn't until... I think that's how I was able to put it together.
Right. Well, let's say what the thing was, because what happened is that so she gave a talk and then she did a reading. It was really good. I'll talk a little bit about what she said, or well, not really, but like, you know, she was basically talking about Circe. And then right after, we would go to the Waterstones. All
right, here we go again. Waterstones.
Where she did like a
shout
book signing.
Shout out to the fully booked of the UK.
And while we were there, I said to myself, man, it would be so funny if I bought a copy of this new book, which I know Mandy hasn't bought yet or hasn't read yet. Had Madeline sign it and then address it to her and then mail it to Mandy. So that's exactly what I did. I bought a copy on the spot, and then I took it to the cashier. I paid for it with my own money. And then I went in line, a line that you can't like get into these days because of social distancing. So it was not a very socially distanced line. And then I waited my turn. And when I got to Madeline, I said, hi. And I was able to write down Mandy's name. I was like, could you write this out to my best friend? She's such a big fan of yours. And it would mean the world to her if you could write this book out to her. And the one thing Madeline Miller said to me is like, wow, you must be a really good friend. And I was like, maybe I am. We'll see by the end of the story. So flash forward 2 days later, I'm already telling Mandy, hey, you haven't read yet Circe, right? And you were like, not yet. It still like hasn't come out here yet in the Philippines. So I said, okay, well, yeah. You know, I'm like, and then like I remember you were even considering possibly buying it. And I was like discouraging.
Yes, okay, I wanted to tell that part.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
go
that was
over.
like, I think, okay, so this event happened, and then the thing about like me and Mio is that, I mentioned this in like our first episode, I think, is that you definitely read more than me. So that means whenever I want to have something new to read, I always ask you. And so that was one of those days. This was like months after the Madeline event, I think, at your school. And then I was literally at Fully Booked, and I saw it at like a copy of it already there because they had just announced it or something. It was like in the new bestsellers. And I was like, oh my god, it's here. And then I asked you, because I said, should I get this book or this other book that you recommended? And then you were like, you know what, I really think maybe you should like hold out on that one.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
No, I remember.
And then your reasoning, pa.
Yeah.
Do you remember your reasoning?
Yes, I do. My reasoning was that, well, you know, like the other book is in paperback, and then Circe just came out.
Yes, and Circe was just only on hard.
Expensive. So if you waited like out a while, you'll get savings if you wait. And by the time you finish the other book that I told you to get, then probably Circe will be out in paperback by then.
It's true.
Like, perfect, absolutely nailed it. I don't know how long it takes to like post things to the Philippines from the UK,
exactly.
But God willing, that's how long it takes. No, but that was
really that's actually true. And so like that happened, and then I completely forgot about it, and I didn't really need to have another book again, I guess.
Right? No. Actually, that's not necessarily true, because side tangent, you then ordered a separate book entirely.
No, I was getting there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was in between that. I also went on this site called Book Depository, and they do ship books from the UK also. But they thankfully did not have Circe on, because there's like specialties, right? Or like a lot of old books that are like harder to find, I guess, especially if you're like here in the Philippines. And I was looking for an anthology of like these plays by oh my god, I totally forgot who it is, but it's the guy who wrote Picnic. And I got that anthology specifically for the play Picnic, because Stan was in that play. And I really wanted to read that stupid play.
This is the second of 2 Madeline Miller episodes where you've invoked Bucky and or Sebastian Stan. Just wanted to
the
keep.
second of two.
I'm like
Thank you.
not that I'm keeping count,
Yeah,
but
I
just
know,
so we
but
put
it's
it out
not
on
that
the record.
difficult. Sorry.
Anyway,
It's my life is entwined
anyway.
with this curse. Anyway, so I was really waiting for it because, like, you know, I couldn't even like find like free PDFs of this play, you know, so I was really annoyed. And then book depository deliveries take like 1 to 2 months to get here from the UK to the Philippines. So I really waited it out. And then like I really remember being so frustrated because it had been over a month already.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really like, oh, what should I do? And I remember you gave me the tip pa to email them and be all like, hey, my book hasn't arrived yet. What do you think happened? And then most likely they'll say sorry and then send you a new copy for free.
Yeah.
So that's what I ended up doing. And I now have 2 copies of that anthology.
They sent you 2 books anyway. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But then...
But here's the thing. Before you even got the first copy...
Before I even got the first copy, yeah. So, like, literally, I emailed them. And then, for real, a couple of days later, I got a package.
Yeah, your
like,
grandfather...
to the,
Your grandpa was like, hey, there's something that we have to get from the post office for you.
Yeah, he was like upset about it because he hates going to the Marikina post office. Gonna call them out, Marikina post office. You guys suck. So he went, and then I had come home from work, and I guess it was late. It was probably like 8:00, which is really late for us. And I just remember having like a really bad day, and coming home to that was like awesome because I was like, yeah, I get to read this super sexist play from the 50s, but I asked for this, so and so I opened it. And it was a really big one. It was really big paha. So I was kind of like, I didn't realize this anthology was going to be so big. And then I could feel that it was hard copy, and I was like, wow, that was actually really cheap for like hard copy. Maybe that writer is really like not well loved anymore. I don't know. And so I open it, and then I really remember the feeling of pulling it out of the bag, and or like the packaging, and like reading it slowly, and like the cover, and being like illiterate for like a second.
Okay, and then pause there, and then like pause there.
Yeah.
Switch perspectives yet again. So it's around like 9 a.m. for me in the UK. I've just had breakfast. Yeah. I've made my own coffee. I was living in the dorm back then. And like, you know, I was just like minding my own business. It was like, this was in June, by the way. So it was like late summer, still getting the warmth. And I was like, yeah, I'm really feeling this.
It was probably raining like shits over here.
Not really. It was raining over there. Yeah. Probably was. And then suddenly I get this text on my phone, and the text is from Mandy, and I'm kind of alarmed because the text is not only in all caps, but it sounds quite violent. And I'm gonna read to you the text exchange that came out of that. So the message that I got on my phone, like unprompted, completely unsolicited, the texts I got were, I quote, "Are you awake, you fucker?" And then I replied, ... Yes. What did I do? ... And then you sent me a shot of the book Circe by Madeline Miller, hard copy, with an autograph inside.
Yeah.
And then you said, "Is this from you?" And then the funny thing is that in the picture you can see the mailing envelope behind it. Which is also funny because I had written it out in my handwriting, which is, as you know, as we were trying to remember the story, you said is very distinct. So that should have been like your first dead giveaway that it was from me.
But it's like totally... No, but you know why I probably didn't realize it? Because I remember you also asking me later, like, you were like, how come you couldn't tell it was me? And then I said, because it had like a stamp or something from the UK, and I was really expecting this stupid anthology of plays to come from the UK. So all I saw when I saw that it was a package and it felt like a book and it said like from the UK, I literally was like, this is it.
Okay, let me finish the text exchange, because then you said,
"Oh yeah, go
is this from you?" And I just said, "Oh." And then like 5 messages of me just going, ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha. And you were like, Leo! And I was like, fucking got you again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, and then like
April
the best part
Fools,
about
gotta wait another month
that.
for your book depository shit.
Yeah. And then like the best part is, so like I'll just, this is going on our stories also, but I'm gonna just, recount it here. But like the picture I sent you, I'm pretty sure, is it the one where it says the note with my name?
No, it's literally just the cover.
Oh, okay. So I also have a picture of the inside, because if you look at it in the cover, it's I mean, like on the first page, it's where she signed, obviously. So it says Mandy, and then signed Madeline, and then there was also a little note that said Mandy in your handwriting, and then and then under my name it also said "Got you again, fucker" or something like that. And then you had told me that that was the paper that you used to write my name down so that she wouldn't spell it wrong.
Mhm.
And then so you were like, so she's touched that piece of paper.
Yeah,
And I was like,
literally.
yeah, no, she has, and I still have it. So there is that, and that was crazy.
And that's how you
That's like,
know, like, all my pranks are very wholesome, as you can tell.
I know other pranks include you lying to my face about your
That's
whereabouts,
true. I've lied to you
only for you to
about
show
which
up.
country I was in, only to show up in your
Yeah,
house.
that's true. You've done it to
I
me
told
twice.
you I was in Scotland. I was actually in your house in
Literally,
Manila.
my house. You were in my house.
Anyway,
You were like, "Hey, I'm not gonna be able
so
to text you
yeah,
for
so
two
very,
days."
very, very wholesome
Anyway.
pranks. Anyway, one of the things that I think is sort of different this time is that, okay, so last time we were talking about Song of Achilles, and we were able to link that very directly into the Iliad, so that like those of our listeners who are familiar with the Iliad would be instantly familiar with like Achilles and Patroclus and all these things. And we even got our friend Leon to step in and explain a bit, like, his sort of sense of the context of the Iliad and the Odyssey and Homer and all these things. But with Circe, this is not really the case,
Yeah.
because you know, I've read the Odyssey, and Circe
Mhm.
is something of a side character. She
Yeah,
comes
isn't
out
her
in
bit not even that long?
right,
Or
so
nor
like
is it
she
detailed?
basically comes out in one book of the Odyssey, and that's book 10.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
thing about that is that she doesn't even like appear. So, like, for those of you who may not be familiar with the Odyssey opens, it's like one of the most famous stories to open in medias res. Like, it happens like just
Mm-hmm.
as like Odysseus, who has sailed back to Ithaca from the Trojan War, for after 10 years in the Trojan War, he spends another 10 years at sea, and
Mm-hmm.
the poem proper opens like basically running towards the end of that 20-year gap. And
Mm-hmm.
when Circe's section appears, it doesn't even appear presented as a scene, like a real-time scene. It's presented as a story that Odysseus tells to like some
Yeah.
hosts who happen to save his ship that gets like shipwrecked
Mm-hmm.
in some island somewhere. So like that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of the context, is that she's like this one character who appears in this one book, and very very few things are kind of like known about her based on that book alone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
all you
Yeah.
know about her is that she's a witch. When I was like watching this interview of Madeline Miller, she was saying that Circe's actually the first witch in Western literature, and like
Wow.
sort of her thing is that she turns men into pigs. Like, that was sort of her big trick,
Yeah, that was her thing.
which
Yeah.
Odysseus is able to like circumvent by like taking this Molly root, which Hermes gives to him to protect him from Circe's spells, and basically that allows Odysseus to kind of like break through her defenses, and she basically
Mm-hmm.
takes him in as a lover, and they stay on her island for a year until they remember, like, okay, actually we're kind of longing to go back home, so let's go back home. So she sends them
Yeah.
off to like she said, okay, you have to stop first by the underworld to see Tiresias, and he'll give you the directions to find your way back home to Ithaca.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically the entirety of her story of the
Yeah.
Odyssey, right? But
Yeah.
if you look further into like the Greek mythological canon, you'll see that her role is actually a lot bigger going all the way down to like the children that she eventually has. Like her bloodline like ends up becoming like sort of crucial in the founding of Rome, and like what will eventually become like
Right.
the Aeneid and with Virgil and all these like Roman founding myths. Madeline Miller, she was like talking at the Chicago Humanities Festival, and she was saying that for her, like the interest came from the sort of vagueness that surrounded this character. That okay, she's very interesting because she's a witch, and you know, like that's sort of exciting. Plus, like you know, she's one of the few women characters in the Odyssey who has power but isn't really punished for it, at least in the context of the
Right.
Odyssey. And when she sees it, when she gets to that scene, like it kind of just like blows by. It's like okay, like oh okay, Odysseus manages to charm his way into her bed, and that's kind of it. Like that's the whole story.
Yeah.
And for her, she felt like there must be something deeper to this. Like there must be a reason that she chooses to turn men into pigs. There must be a reason that she
Right.
tells him to go to the
Yes.
underworld, or like where she gets her power from, because like her power is clearly not divine, and it comes from somewhere else. And she has all these animals that are hanging out around her, and like that's what she basically wanted to dig into for this book. I also want to mention, okay, so at this juncture, I wanted to talk a little bit about my first ever exposure to the Odyssey, because
In class?
yeah. Did you ever have to like
No.
do you remember what your first exposure to the Odyssey was?
I don't.
Okay, I remember.
I don't think I do.
The thing is,
Yeah,
I
okay, go
remember
ahead.
that in like late grade school or high school, the 1997 NBC miniseries adaptation of the Odyssey.
Of the Odyssey?
you've-
NBC?
Yeah, and you've never heard of
Not
this,
even
right?
BBC?
No, okay, you've never heard of this, right? I mean, like it was
clearly no.
at the time like very big, like epic drama, and
Oh.
given like the budget at the time, like you know the effects at the time,
Yeah.
it's very rough
Yeah.
stuff.
Well,
But-
what year was it? Sorry, 97?
97. Now here's the thing. Now, without looking it up, I want you to
Yeah.
know the cast of
Who
this
was in it?
adaptation is
Oh my
like
God.
very loaded. So like Odysseus is played by Armand Asante, who this is the only thing I know him for. I don't know him in anything else.
His
But,
is familiar. What is it? It's probably the same as you.
Athena is played by Isabella Rossellini.
No!
Tiresias is played by Christopher Lee.
What is this cast?
The dad of Emma Roberts appears as one of the head suitors.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like trying to remember. Okay, well, here's the main thing. Guess who plays Circe? It's somebody you know.
Somebody I know?
It's somebody, like, when I tell you who it is, you won't expect it.
Yeah,
but it's someone you
I can't even
definitely
cast this
know.
right now. Do I have a favorite movie of this person?
I wouldn't
Would you
say a favorite movie.
Oh, favorite play? Musical?
Perhaps.
What?
All right.
How old is this person?
Would you like me to tell you who it was?
Oh my god, I'm so shocked. Okay, who?
Playing the role of Circe
Oh my god.
was
I have not looked this up, I swear.
the Broadway legend
Oh my god, Idina Menzel. What? I don't know who
Bernadette
this is.
Peters.
No! Oh my god.
So I want you to just
Okay.
imagine.
No,
like,
but
she
as soon as you said it,
that
I
she
saw it.
Imagine
Like, you know what I
she
mean?
literally shows up and she's like, Odysseus, son of
Yeah,
Laertes,
no.
you
No,
have been
and can you just
hard-pressed.
imagine?
You are dry as leaves in winter, but
I
there
hate
is
this
harbor
impression.
here.
I hate this specifically. I was gonna say no, but the whole bit about her voice.
Yeah.
Like Cersei's voice being different.
No, but like,
You think
for
that's what
it's
they
worth,
knew?
like, I rewatched
They
it.
were like,
I rewatched it before.
oh, did you?
Yeah, before this week. And like I was
Like the whole thing?
trying, specifically the Circe portion, because I wanted to see like how does that match in my mind. And like it is, as you would expect, very brief. It's very sensual. But like her, it's Bernadette Peters, man. What can I say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
very
was like
true.
my first exposure to the Odyssey. So surprisingly,
That's really not who I was expecting.
Well,
I'm still shook.
I literally saved that for this moment. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to hint it to you.
No, you did not.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
didn't. So I kept that secret.
That was good.
So the interesting thing also is that I don't know if we mentioned this in the last episode, but Song of Achilles took Madeline about 10 years to write. and that when it came out in 2011, the time between Song of Achilles and Circe was about 6-7 years. So she spent a lot less time, I guess, working on this book like directly after Song of Achilles. But like you can see sort of her methodology in writing Circe had a little less to do with following what happens necessarily in the canon than it does with trying to like explore these character portraits in a very interesting way. And I'm actually gonna like kind of preempt my evaluation a bit there, because I honestly have so many feelings about this book. Of the four books that we've read so far, it might be my favorite.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
Wow.
I like that's why I was saying, like, so we were trying to record this episode how many days in a row, and I was saying it's almost like I'm being edged.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
because I just need to talk about this book. It's like it's really,
but he was really excited about this.
It's blowing my mind because like okay, the thing about Madeline Miller is that she has a very particular style of storytelling that I would say is comprehensive.
Yes.
Like she assumes like the perspective of character, and then she'll follow the character pretty much their entire lives, and even in the case of Patroclus, like after his death.
Into death, yeah.
Circe literally spans 1,000 years, but the way it reads, it also reads like it's kind of like going through the life of one person, which it is. I mean, but it sort of like scales down that 1,000 years in a pretty impressive way, which like I kind of like have been thinking about a lot since I finished the book. And the thing about it that I really like is that it's this very moving portrait of a person whose feelings change over time.
Yes.
Like you see that she ends up wanting really different things for herself.
Her life.
Yeah, from the beginning, and you see how that's rooted. Like, okay, like I really love it when writers are able to depict changes in aspirations and how that those aspirations are linked to age, to youth, especially, that what you want as a young person is not what you want as an older person. And in fact, like that fits very well with the Odyssey, because some part of the Odyssey, the story of the Odyssey, is Odysseus kind of like coming out of the Trojan War, and he's so high on the glory and victory of the war. He's like, I can do literally anything.
Anything.
And he goes out and he kind of does everything, and he's like, ugh, maybe I can't really, like, maybe I don't really want to do everything. And that's sort of like the way of interpreting how the Odyssey is about age, no? With Circe, like, there's something about this that's a little more complex, but it also feeds into how this book is also very slow in its pace.
Yes.
Like, did you feel
that?
But
also, it's this is why I thought that this book was much longer than Song of Achilles. But like, it's lesser chapters, definitely. I think they're just longer chapters also. But then I feel like it's, what I wanted to say was that it's like a bit of both. Na parang you feel like it's been a long time, but then also whenever she says something, like Circe says something casual, like it's probably been decades, but for me it felt like months or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you really feel that with her. Like whenever people jolt back actual time at her, she has no idea. Well, because, she's been in isolation. And I guess maybe that's why this is a good thing to read right now. Well, we are all isolated. I just thought of that now.
That's true. I never really thought about that aspect, but she does remain literally socially distanced for like 80% of the book.
And like us, she did not really ask for this.
Yeah.
Well, she did, but then,
Right.
But like, I also, really, that's what I enjoyed about this, because in a different way that, parang with Song of Achilles, I guess it also had to do with Patroclus being mortal, ? But you could really feel every year that passed, because almost every chapter was at least 1 year.
Yeah.
And with Circe, like literally, decades could pass between chapters. And another thing I wanted to say was that I think another thing that makes it like so interesting in a newer way that like Song of Achilles could not be this is related to what you were saying, that parang you can see her growth,
Mm-hmm.
and like you, and I guess because of that, Madeline had more room to really flesh out this growth compared to Song of Achilles, whereas you couldn't really see. I mean, you could tell that Patroclus was different, between
Yeah.
him before Achilles and him after, and then him before the war and then them after. But again, there was no room to really flesh that out
Right. Or well,
in the same
I
way that she
mean,
gets to do here.
like there is some, like, I'm thinking back of like the growth of Patroclus in that book, and there's certainly, like, it's shown in the way like he kind of grows from, like, even outside of his
Like how he handles
relationship with,
himself
yeah, like his way outside of his relationship with Achilles, like
when he
there's that
starts
whole
making
thing, yeah,
friends.
he starts making friends, which is like a far cry from
Yeah,
how like he was kind of shunned
yeah,
by
he's
everyone, no? And
yeah,
like that becomes sort of his driving force
yeah,
for him to like beg
right.
Achilles, like, hey, we need to do something about these guys because
This war.
all our friends are gonna die, right? And
Yeah,
you see
and
that
Achilles
growth,
is literally like your friends.
right? Yeah, yeah, basically. But with Circe, there's like sort of a bigger challenge here for Madeline to overcome, because a lot of these changes that she's having to overcome are done really in isolation, and like
Yes,
they're triggered by moments where she has to, or she's forced into encounters with like other
like to.
beings, other gods or other
Mm,
men. But for the most part of it, you're really kind of steeped in the fact that she's exiled on this island
alone.
alone, which is like,
Yeah.
I guess that's part of what accounts for, like, okay, like I will say, like, part of what accounts for the somewhat slow pace of this novel is that there's so much of it that has to do with showing her process. Like when she first, like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna jump ahead a bit, but like when she first
When she
gets to
first
the
discovers
island,
her powers.
yeah, when she first gets to the island, she spends like a whole chapter just,
Chapter, just like,
yeah,
yeah.
just showing how
Yes.
she explores the island and figures out, okay, if I get this flower and I put it with this root,
Mm-hmm.
I could actually come up with a
Then
dye
it'll.
that will allow me to color this cloth. And it's like,
Yeah,
whoa, this
yeah.
is gonna take a while. but
Yeah.
but like,
Oh, she's doing basic home things first?
yeah,
Okay.
but again, it just also does this sort of magic effect on you as the reader that makes you feel like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
both a lot of time has passed and hasn't passed,
Yeah.
which again feeds into what I think is so moving about the end, which I'll get to in a while.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think,
And also,
yeah,
I think what helps is that knowing that, like, she kind of always mentions that she doesn't really need to sleep anyway
yeah,
because they're gods.
yeah,
So like, I don't know, that was something that like I always thought about, like especially in that chapter when she was just doing shit. I was like, don't you gotta rest? But then I remembered,
right,
that
yeah,
they
no,
don't
no,
have to unless
that
they really
literally
want
no.
to. Yeah, she does not have to
Okay,
rest.
yeah, I think we can go straight into talking about Cersei now, the book. So
Yeah.
we've already sort of like explained like the context around her, like who she's supposed to be in the context of this epic, the Odyssey. When the book begins, it literally begins with her birth, and the way it's sort of explained is that she's the daughter of a titan and a nymph. She's the daughter of Helios, who's basically the sun titan, and then her mom is Percy, who is basically like a nymph, like a water nymph, who's like a daughter of Oceanos, the ocean, which makes Circe effectively like a nymph herself. And it's interesting because like right off the bat, you have, there's this hierarchy of like divinity. The gods are basically on top. The titans, they've mostly been vanquished except for the ones who we actually see in the novel, because they've struck a peace with Zeus, and it's a very uneasy truce, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then nymphs are basically the lowest. Like the way like Madeline was saying it is
Like
that,
they're almost on the same level as mortals.
but not even, because like they're sort of, so like the way Madeline was like putting it is that they still have some divinity which makes them desirable to mortals, but not desirable to gods, that gods can basically treat them as less than themselves. So like like if you look
Mm,
back at Thetis, that was kind of why they felt like, okay, there's license for us to give Thetis to this man, even though Thetis doesn't really
yeah.
want this man, because for
Right.
us, like, she's not really anything, but for the man,
Yeah.
he sees her as already a god. So
As
like
like
it's like
yeah,
this
yeah,
very
yeah.
interesting power dynamic where they're kind of like,
Right.
that's kind of like the status quo.
Yeah, and jumping ahead, like one of them, Helios offers Thetis to someone
Yeah.
later on, and
To
that guy
Glaucus, to
was
Glaucus.
even like, yeah, to Glaucus. Okay, you were gonna say it. To Glaucus, and Glaucus was like,
Yeah.
no, it's okay. Someone else na lang.
Yeah, so like the power dynamic
Yeah.
is like already very evident. And even then, like,
Yes.
the whole god thing. So like I've always like read even like kind of going back into the epics themselves, like godliness is some
Mhm.
kind of privilege. Like
Yes,
the way
absolutely.
the Greeks understood gods or viewed gods or
Yeah.
perceived gods is not like the same way like that we've been raised in like the Catholic tradition, and
Yeah.
kind of like it's a very
Yeah.
different way of looking at what a god is. For them, gods are more like
Mhm.
superpowered beings who are immortal and unchanging.
Yeah.
And they have dominion over certain elements of the earth.
Yeah.
So like that means like they have all these emotions, these desires that they kind of like take. They take their whims over the
For
world.
granted?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like they kind of just like have their way with the world and not really care about it. They
Mhm.
don't have any empathy for it because there are no stakes for them. They're
Yeah,
immortal,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me,
And
like,
I do remember that being like heavily touched on when we were studying that in school.
yeah,
Like, I said this in our last episode that like my professor at the time was like saying that these epics are basically a cautionary tale for you so that you wouldn't be as selfish as these gods.
right,
That you
right,
would do something like be so selfish all the time just for like no reason.
yeah.
Because that was basically their role, right?
But that also speaks, I guess, to like some kind of, because like this is something I was thinking about a lot when we were reading Song of Achilles and even talking about it, is that one of the things that differentiates Song of Achilles with Iliad is that in the Iliad, the gods are basically at the forefront of the conflict.
Yes.
They're basically very prominent. Whereas in Song of
Yeah.
Achilles, they're hardly ever there at all. The only gods you ever see are
Yeah.
Thetis and Apollo, like who
And
makes like
Apollo that
who's
one
like
time.
literally a cameo. I remember thinking that felt weird to me because a lot of the power balances came from this association to the gods, or this relationship with the gods,
Yeah.
and bartering with them and
Yeah.
trying to like
Mhm.
offer them things. But for the most part of Song of Achilles, they remained an unseen force. And even like when they do offer
Yeah.
sacrifices, you just see the effects of the sacrifice, but you,
You
never
just
see
see
the
the
god
effects, yeah. You just see
like coming
what
down to.
happens. Yeah.
Whereas like here, like necessarily they have to deal with the gods because the nature of Circe's character is that she has divine heritage. And
Yeah.
like that sort of like fed into like one of the things that I found exciting about it is that it explored, like it kind of established like, okay, there's a status quo between the Titans and the gods where
Mhm.
the gods have power over the Titans, but the Titans have always known that there's always been a way that they could come back into power if they wanted to, if they really wanted to, and if they had the power to do it, or if they got enough power to do it, they would be easily able to
would.
overtake Zeus and all the other gods and
Mhm.
Olympus and the world essentially. So that's sort of like this underlying status quo that even like the parents of Circe, she's afraid of her parents basically, they're
Yeah.
afraid of someone else, and you kind of like
Yeah.
realize that fear of the gods kind of feeds into their
Mhm.
cautiousness towards Circe. So
Yes.
she's like born into those circumstances. It's also worth noting that Circe is like the eldest child in her family. She has basically 3 siblings we know of: Perses, Pasiphae, and
Pasiphae and
Aetes.
80s?
80s.
Yeah.
His name. I just realized like
80s?
80s, like 90s.
Yeah, named after the era.
It's like, oh, no wonder there were so many references to disco.
I know. Yeah. They had a lot of
Oh
those.
boy, oh boy.
Do you think it's 80s or is it like 80s?
Okay, here's my thing. It's the E with the umlaut, so that's pronounced as like big E, right?
That's probably
And it's AE, so it's A-E-Ts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 8.
We're so...
it's 80s.
I hate like Western language.
I'm sorry to all Greek scholars.
Anyway, Yeah, so she's born to that family. She has those siblings. But the weird thing is that
What if from now on we just call him the bunso? Sorry.
Okay, no, but here's the thing, because like
So we don't
that's
complicate
sort of the
things.
funny thing is that her siblings are constantly undermining her at the same time.
Her, yeah.
Yeah, like
Which, as an Asian, did that bother you?
no, okay. I mean,
I'm
like
an only child, and I was so bothered.
no, I mean, like for me, it undermined it to the fact that I kept forgetting that she was the eldest sibling, the eldest child, basically.
Yeah,
Because like she was
right.
always sort of being
But for
left
me,
at
I couldn't
home.
forget.
I always kept like seeing her like being left at home, and it made me like almost think like she's like a child throughout this whole section of the book. Like she's not growing. She's just
Yeah.
basically smaller than everyone, including her younger siblings who are like now growing into these majestic beings almost.
Exactly.
But that's sort of like
including the one brother that she gets to take
yeah,
care of.
yeah. Like that's the general idea behind her relationships. Is that so? Two of her siblings,
Yeah.
see Pasiphae and Perseus. She's not good with them. They make fun of her a lot, so she really doesn't like them.
Yeah.
Aetes is the only one that she's kind of basically close to, and he's very inquisitive and he's very wise, and he's the only one who will talk to her nicely.
And he like laughs at her jokes.
Yeah. So they spend time on this island where he basically shows her like, oh, this is the world that we live in. Like it's so nice, and it's very innocent and very wholesome. But it's also like his wisdom is also like part of his divinity, because it like kind of is like presumed like, oh, he has this preternatural sense of the world, and Aetes basically like shows like, yeah, we're actually like the four of us, we're capable of like manipulating things in nature.
Something.
And like that is a running thread throughout the novel that is kind of like discussed over time what exactly that means. But it's very ominous. And like surely the Titans
and it starts with that question that he has where he asks her, what does your divinity feel like? And she's like, what kind of question is that? I don't know. And he automatically has an answer, and you don't realize it until much later that it's because he had reason to think about it, because he already knew.
Yeah. So
that the four of them were something else.
Now here's the thing: you brought that question up. I think that's a very important question in that first part of the book, because she also finds herself, as much as she ends up thinking about what her divinity feels like, whatever that would mean to her, she's also thinking of this other question about the mortals whom she's aware of. So that brings her to this like very important formative incident in her early life, where she basically meets the Titan Prometheus. And as we all know, Prometheus is the Titan who rebelled against the gods by stealing the fire from Olympus and then bringing it to the mortals. And then like the mortals like have since been able to develop technology from that discovery of fire, or from that gift of fire, which is such a big thing that the gods decided to punish Prometheus for all eternity. And when you see Prometheus for the first time, like he's being whipped by the Furies, but then he eventually gets given the punishment that we all know him for, which is that there's like a crow that comes down and pecks at his liver.
He's on a mountain.
Yeah, and like the liver regrows. So that's the thing that we all know him for. In this novel, what happens is that you see him get whipped by the Fury, and kind of as he's left behind to hang there, Circe sort of takes pity on him, and she's like, I don't see why he had to be like, brought down this way, or even why my dad and my uncles had to stand by and watch as he got punished like this. Like, it's sort of demeaning for us as Titans, because like this guy is basically one of us, and we kind of just let him get punished this way. So she takes pity on him. She brings him like a drink to kind of like nurse himself. And Prometheus he obviously appreciates the gesture and entertains her. And she asks him, okay, so you've seen what the mortals are like. What are they like? So that's what brings this question to her. At the same time that she's asking what her divinity is, she's also asking about what are humans really like? What's this other side of the world that I don't know? And that question's also important.
And he basically is like, he says that wala lang, they just, the difference with he says they look like us, but the difference is that basically they age and then they die.
Well, he also, and then doesn't he also say like they're all different in their own way, which is like not a very
Oh,
helpful
that's true.
answer
Yeah.
to her.
Yeah. And she literally was like, okay, and then
Yeah.
no, but then he brings up the concept of death,
Yeah.
which she had never really heard of before. And then he basically explains the underworld, but to her, and she was just like, and that happens to them, and then what?
Yeah.
And then he's like, voila, and then
Yeah.
it repeats.
Yeah, so it's very much in the dark for her. I forget when it's brought up in the book, but this is something that Madeline Miller talked about a lot in her interview, is that she emphasized there was this point where, like, I'm gonna mention it now, but it still feels a little unclear to me. But like the way they describe Circe, like comparing her to the other Titans, is saying that she had the voice of a mortal, which
she had like a voice. No. She had a voice of an owl. Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about because it's one of my favorite parts.
Okay.
So like they kept saying that her voice was ugly, right? Like that was one of the biggest
right.
insults they had about her. They were always like, "You squawk," and then also her name means owl.
Yeah.
Her name means owl, and Aeetes, his name means eagle. And one of the reasons why they were put together was because they both sounded alike.
Right.
Which is really squawky and like really high pitched and just annoying to everyone else who lived in the Great Hall or Oceanus' Hall. Whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I don't. And then it wasn't until she was exiled already and she met Hermes, who basically admits to liking her right away, even if it just means physically. I don't fucking know. And she kind of questions that. She's like, why would... Because no one's ever really... Well, that's not true. But, at that point, she knows that she's different compared to other gods. Like, she has always heard that she is very lesser, especially because of her voice. And when she mentions that, Hermes is like, well, there's nothing wrong with your voice. You just sound like a mortal.
Right, okay, that's when it comes in.
Like, really... that's, like, when it shakes her. Because she's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I guess I would know because I've spent so much time with him, but mortals just sound like you, and it's not that bad.
Yeah, so...
And then she says, but my brother sounds like me. And then she's like, yeah. And she questions, how's that possible? I'm Titan only. And he's like, I don't know. That's the one time he's like, I don't freaking know.
Yeah.
You really want to explain divinity?
Right,
and then she's like, yeah, okay, fine.
So, like, you see, like, from a very early age, like, she's festering the sort of sense of self-hatred, which, like, she's really, like, wrestling with because she knows that she doesn't have, like, the powers of her father. She, like, takes more after her mother, who is very mean. Like, again,
horrible.
another mean mom category thing.
Yeah.
He's
super mean
mom. Yeah. Who, like, kind of like...
There's a point that I'm gonna go back to later.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of annoying women in the first, like, 250 plus pages, of this book.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Now,
especially the mom.
So, like, this is all happening, and the thing that's sort of, like, the first big thing that kind of, like, upsets Circe's life after this is that she ends up meeting this mortal named Glaukos, and he's, like, a fisherman, and he, like, is interested in her, and he spends time with her, and, like, she's thinking, like, I wish I could spend more time with this guy, like, forever, like, basically, but he's immortal, and, like, it would never happen. And the thing is, like, at that point, she already knows a little more about her divinity or her powers. Earlier in the novel, like, Aeetes had told her, like, okay, I think I've figured out a little bit more about our divinity, and it has to do with these plants, these flowers that sprouted out in the places where the gods had fought the Titans and the Titans had fell. Wherever their blood spilled on the soil, it basically sprouted out the special flower.
Mm-hmm.
And she believes that if she can use the flowers correctly, she'll be able to manipulate things and to reveal their true nature. And it's like, it's really very much this thing where it's like, oh, she's very much dealing with her first love in a very realistic way.
Yeah.
Where she just wants what's best for this guy without really knowing what he's all about.
Him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially, like, without anticipating the ramifications of what she's planning to do, what she wants to do.
Exactly.
Because like, you know, like she, for all intents and purposes, this is the first mortal she's ever met. So
Yeah.
she really has no real sense of what their nature is like apart from what Prometheus has told her. And for her thinking like, okay, at least if I turn him into a god, that's gonna just solve the problem of his
I have time.
mortality. Right? I'll have time to make him love me or something like
Yeah.
that.
To
Essentially.
know him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to know him also. Yeah.
So she ends up giving him like sort of the sap from that flower, and he basically turns into a god. You know, which is like cool. Like he's having a great time. He's like, "Whoa, this is amazing! Like I finally feel like
He's
I've
having
unlocked this
too
new
much.
level."
He, yeah, literally, he
and
gets
like
more male.
and like okay, yeah, wait, yeah. Like speaking of him becoming more male, like literally nobody is like pissed off about this happening.
Yeah,
Like within a
it's
page of him becoming a
crazy.
god, like he gets given his own palace, and then he's like introduced to Poseidon.
His
Like
own palace
it's like
under the water.
it's literally like he basically got a job in a high paying company as a janitor, and then the next day he was told, "Yeah, we're gonna move
And the
you up
next
to the
day he was
executive.
like-
We're gonna make you." It's the Hudsucker
Yeah,
Posse.
literally.
So I
It
was
was
like,
so crazy.
yeah. So it was like, you know, like that obviously gets to his head, and he ends up kind of just like basking in sort of the vanity of being this new god. Like surely, okay, like on one hand, like he's being a patron to his hometown, like he's giving them like bountiful like harvest fish, but at the same time he's also like,
yes, but also he killed his father.
wait, okay, the whole thing there though, it's like his father was a dick.
But to be fair, his dad naman low-key deserved it.
Yeah. Like
yeah,
he's
his
saying
dad
like
low-key deserved
my
it.
father like
But then
beats
that
me
was
for
also
not
an interesting
catching
point
fish.
because when Circe finds out about that, she's like gulat, like she was like, "Oh, you would kill a mortal?"
Right.
And literally he's like, that mortal? Yes." And
It's
that's
like,
part of her whole innocence
yeah,
thing
it's
also,
like you don't know.
yeah, like he literally was like, and it's really emphasized by how when he became a god, the first thing he noticed was like, I'm never gonna have bruises again.
Right.
Like that kind of shit, and you're kind of like, oh god, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
this kid's traumatized, but also he's a dick.
Yeah, and like it gets to his head to the point that he starts getting noticed, or he starts noticing rather this other nymph named Scylla.
Here we go.
And like eventually like that escalates to the point where he's like,
how are we pronouncing it? Sorry, are we doing
I'm
Scylla?
gonna go with Scylla. Or I don't want to say Skyla. That feels
okay.
like that doesn't feel correct.
Okay, I'll go with whatever.
I think it's Scylla.
Skyla.
It's because I'm not sure if it's Scylla either, because otherwise it would just be SY, but then it's SC. Okay. So anyway, Scylla.
That's
okay.
True.
Anyway, for all of you who have read any kind of like Greek mythology at all, you know who I'm talking about. So, like Circe gets jealous of Scylla because Scylla is now betrothed to like Glaucus, like in the blink of an eye, and she's like, oh, I hate Scylla. Scylla just like she's just like concerned about her looks. She doesn't have like a true good nature, not like me. Yeah. She's like, it's like on my own. She's like singing on my own, but angrily.
And she's literally like, I'm not like other nymphs.
Yeah.
That's her this entire section.
So she decides like, well, you know, what I did once I can do again, and she like gets more of the sap from the flowers of the Titan blood.
Yep.
I mean, like, okay, it's called Pharmakeia. It's so funny
that
I called it like
great.
by its long name, and then like she basically sprinkles it into like sort of the grove where Scylla takes a bath, and it turns her into like this hideous 6-headed monster that smells horrible, and it's basically the most foul creature you've ever seen, and. Like, you know, it's a very upsetting.
She dives into the ocean.
Yeah, she like in despair, and it's a very upsetting reaction because, like, you think like people, like the other gods, the other titans, would be shocked to hear what happened, but they end up kind of just like.
But they're literally not.
Yeah, they gossip about it, and they laugh over it, and like Circe's like sort of sitting there thinking like, oh shit, like maybe I should claim responsibility because I just realized what I've done. And like
Yeah.
Glaucus
No,
really
and
liked her.
that's where she feels for Prometheus. Like he's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's like, and then she can. That's also one of the reasons why she considers like, what do you call that? Turning herself in essentially because
Yeah.
she's like, it's the noble thing to do.
Yeah, and the worst part is that when she does sort of turn herself in, that kind of gets
No one
undermined
believes her.
right away. Yeah, like she's like, "I'm sorry, I did it," and everyone's like, "No, you didn't. What the
No, you
fuck?" Like,
didn't. Like, how could you
yeah,
freaking do
and they
this?
kind of like try to show like whatever you think you
Yeah.
did, we told you
Oh,
essentially
sorry.
to do
Okay,
it.
wait. We should mention also that by the time that she is admitting all this, her siblings are all gone.
Oh, okay. Wait, I was gonna
Because
get
we
to
didn't say
that in
that
a bit.
yet.
I was gonna get to that in a bit.
Oh, okay.
Like
So yeah, go.
the thing is like yeah, like so like sort of she kind of like feels like the sense of defiance, like even her like sort of wrongdoings, even her sins aren't really hers, and so she has this
Yeah.
moment where she kind of talks back to her dad, and she says like,
Yeah.
no, you're wrong. Like I totally did this, and like
Yeah.
Helios
He literally
like
sucks up
he
the.
like blows up literally and like nearly
Yeah.
half he basically half incinerates her, and
Half.
it's this very
Yep.
like traumatic experience for her.
Yeah. And she, for once in her life, cannot breathe.
Yeah, so it's really a difficult thing for her. Okay, so going at the same time, so this is the thing that we forgot to mention is that at the same time
The siblings.
the situation is that she is kind of also like away from the, I guess, like the company of 80s and even like the sort of bad manners of her other siblings, because they've all been sent away
Yes.
to kind of be married off into different kingdoms or to lead different
Yeah,
kingdoms
or to start kingdoms.
yeah, so like 80s he gets sent off to this far off kingdom. I'm not sure if it's Colchis.
Colchis?
Yeah, Colchis.
Right? Colchis.
And then
Colchis.
Pasiphae, she gets married off to the king of Crete, King Minos, who again, very famous figure in Greek mythology. You
would know.
You would know if you know. The real ones know.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, and then
actually, you know what? Can I just say this book is very if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Compared to Song of Achilles, even when I was first reading this,
yeah,
it was really just like, oh my gosh, is this how it's going down? This is how she's
right.
I'll get to that later. Anyway, but yeah.
And then like Perseus gets sent off. Perseus
goes to Persia.
Yeah, he's like,
and his reason, pa, was their name sounds like mine.
Yeah,
I hate men.
Yeah, no, but like they kind of just go off, and she's kind of like left there, and like she's reckoning with that. The thing though is that eventually Aetes does come back, and he's like, I finally figured out this whole thing about our divinity. And the truth he basically reveals to all the Titans is that the four children, Circe, Aetes, Pasiphae, and Perseus, are all capable of manipulating the flowers of the Titan blood, the Pharmakeia, in such a way that it will basically give them the advantage to fight back the gods. And this is like sparked some kind of tension, which got me really excited because it sort of implied like,
same.
So for once there's like now this acknowledgement that something can be more powerful than a god, and it gives like
them.
And it gives Circe like this momentary like burst of confidence, like almost like fearful confidence, like, whoa, what am I really if like even the Titans are like discussing how I could be used as a weapon. And I was like, oh, this could be like an interesting like direction that the story could go. But like for what it's worth, like Helios decides, no, this isn't tenable. We're gonna have to protect the peace. And so he goes to Zeus and he basically confesses the whole thing to him. And they make this agreement like, okay, well, your other kids are in far off kingdoms. We don't have to really worry about them. But the one who's kind of with you, we have to do something about her. And what they decide is they decide to send Circe off to this deserted island to live off a life in exile. For what? Literally, the crime is just who she is. She hasn't really done
Existing,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
So,
not. Yeah. It's not even for what the
I
thing she's done
mean,
for Scylla or Glaucus or anything. It's
yeah,
literally just because they know that Zeus will see her as a threat, so they kind of want to
yeah.
like
So
neuter her
they,
power
mhm.
to prove that they are loyal to the gods, which is again very sad,
Yeah,
very frustrating.
yeah, yeah.
She gets sent to this island called Aya. Sorry, it's I.
Aya?
I. This is very.
Okay.
This is a struggle, guys. The name of the island is. It's
Is
spelled
it not Aya?
Aiaia. So there are two yas. So
Aya.
when I was trying to read the name of the island at first, I kept thinking this is a Filipino reference. So sorry, non-Filipino listeners.
What are you
Of
gonna
the
say?
Ayala ad. Do you remember the Ayala ad? They would play
Gago.
sometimes in cinemas, and it would go
That's
Aya, Aya,
Stop!
Aya, Aya.
I hate you.
So whenever I read the name out in the book, I would think I was cast
Yeah.
off to the island of Aya, Aya.
Okay, stop it.
So
I was okay. In terms of Filipino references, though, she does at one point reference Aegis. There's one point in the book where she does say Aegis.
No, but
or
wait.
Aegis, however you say it, and I literally was like, "All right."
No, that's too many layers. That's too many layers.
I know, but for all the Filipinos out there,
okay.
if you know, you know.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, she quickly, like, sort of adapts to her circumstances. And I think that speaks a lot to,
Mhm.
even though Circe is not necessarily, I wouldn't say she's necessarily cunning, she is sort of resilient in the way that like, she doesn't, like, submit herself to her circumstances so quickly. Like, she doesn't think,
Yes.
I'm gonna just, like, live out here and sit around here and be sad
Yeah.
here. Like, she decides,
Yeah.
like, maybe I will go into that forest today.
Yeah.
Maybe I will find out what flowers are there, what roots are there. And she goes through that, as I mentioned before, that really, like, long systematic process of getting to know the
A
island.
whole chapter's worth.
Yeah, and figuring out, like, what's sort of there. And it's at the same time that she starts at the fair with Hermes, as we previously mentioned. He just shows up on her island, and they start getting it on. And it's like it's a very different relationship from what she had with Glaucus, because like
because this dude actually liked her.
Yeah. Not only that, she clearly has no respect for Hermes. Like it like
that's
continuously
true.
declines until like she's like literally telling him, "I'm done with you." Yeah.
Yeah.
So like their relationship doesn't really go that far, and like it's sort of funny because like there are things where like Hermes will try to like amuse her with his higher divinity, but like you can tell it doesn't really have an effect on Circe the way he would have probably expected it to happen. Like, okay, there's this one part where like it sort of irked me because of how like
yabang he is.
Inert. Yeah, he's like very proud, but it was a very inert brag where he was saying like, I heard this prophecy about you.
Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
you remember? Okay.
And she was like,
yeah.
Okay, what's the prophecy then?
What was it?
So
wait, I wanna. This is funny. Do you want to say it? Okay, go.
Yeah, I'm saying. Wait.
Sorry.
So she's like, so the prophecy is that years from now, you're gonna be on this island, and this boat's gonna come by, and that boat,
and a dude's gonna be on it.
Yeah, dude's gonna come out. His name's Odysseus. And he's gonna jump out of the boat, and he's gonna come to this island. And then Circe's like, "All right, and then
she
what?"
Was like, "Okay," and
yeah. And then he was like, "Well, that's pretty much it." She's like, "That's the worst
and
prophecy."
She was like, "That's the worst."
Yeah.
This is the worst prophecy ever.
And everyone said, "Yeah, we agree."
Yeah.
Like the prophecy was like
right.
basically anything. I almost like felt like I know that that's actually in the text of the original Odyssey almost, but then that is in the text of the original Odyssey.
Is it?
But then I almost felt like she could have clearly skipped out on this. Like we know it's building up towards that. Like you So
it's like it's just her being like, look how cute and annoying these two can be.
Yeah. So the thing that breaks this sort of cyclical pattern of her life on Aya, is that this other boat does arrive. It's not bearing Odysseus, but it is bearing this other man who seems like very well built and like sort of wise looking. And it turns out to be Daedalus, whom she had met or seen years earlier at the wedding of Pasiphae to King Minos. And as it turns out, Pasiphae is pregnant with child, and she has summoned Circe to help deliver the baby. And like there are all these things that are sort of shrouded in mystery, because like Pasiphae has already asked permission for her exile to be temporarily lifted so that Circe could come to...
For Circe's exile to be lifted.
So that she can come to deliver the baby. But Pasiphae won't let Daedalus tell her what's wrong with the baby.
Yeah. And also she specifically mentions that to get to her, they have to pass where Scylla is.
Yeah.
Scylla?
Yeah,
Scylla. What did we agree on? Sorry.
Scylla.
Scylla.
So, they pass that. And like, right away, Circe kind of gets this idea na, oh, okay, she's arranged this whole thing as a guilt trip for me. Like, the thing with Scylla is sort of the thing that kind of puts her on that idea. Because they had to pass there going to Aiaia. Which means that sailors died on the way to summon her. Right? And like, because she had caused Scylla to look that way or to turn into that creature, she's essentially like secondhand responsible for the deaths of those sailors. So that guilt is sort of bearing on her. She's really pissed off with her sister. They get to Crete after several days. And then when they get there, she's brought right away to the chamber where Pasiphae is being, like, delivering her baby. And like she can tell right away, like something is hella wrong. They have to do like a C-section. It's like really like
essentially.
Yeah, it's really intense.
And it's the most gruesome.
Yep.
Intense C-section.
Yeah, and they take the baby out, and it turns out the baby is a half bull, half man, or as we popularly know him, the Minotaur. She gives birth to the Minotaur, and like. Circe is clearly like horrified by all of this. Like, what the hell is happening
She
here?
literally was like, come on, man. This is what... And then the whole time, Pasiphae still finds like energy in her to shit on Circe.
Yeah, like she's like, it's sort of like the thing that was, I mean, like, okay, it was a bit confusing to me, but it also like doubly so for Circe, where it seemed like Pasiphae was reveling in the fact that her child was now this monster.
Yes. Because she would be like, get it out of me. And then Circe was like, okay, I'm going to kill it now. And she was like, no, it has to live. And Circe was like, what? Okay.
Yeah, and then it's like soon after where Circe like finds out like, oh, the reason why Pasiphae is reveling in it is because she had intended to have a half bull, half child.
And that's one of the like greatest twists of this. Like I remember the first time I read this, and it was in this part already. I was like, what? Like I literally was like, okay, yeah, this has to be here, but like, what is it gonna? Like I knew that Madeline had put it there for a reason, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not until that part later on, when Circe has that realization.
It's really
that she did it on purpose,
and it's really disturbing in terms of like how even Minos reacts to it, because Minos' reaction, instead of like being like disgusted by what happens, as Circe thought he would, what ends up happening is he claims the child as his own, and he can't basically let go of Pasiphae because she is sort of this divine connection to him.
Yeah.
And so,
but he wants to kill it.
Yeah,
he does want to kill it.
So like,
but he knows he can't.
It's this uneasy balance of like, okay, I have to maintain this relationship, but it means that I have to get my hands dirty with things that I really do not like. And in this case, it's having to keep this baby Minotaur.
This freaking child.
So like Circe and Daedalus put themselves to the task of devising means to like contain the Minotaur somehow. And at first, like, he builds his cage, but then he eventually, like, envisions...
And then the Minotaur breaks the cage.
Yeah, and then eventually he envisions, like, what if I just built, like, a giant maze? While Circe is like, okay, I'm going to form, like, this drought that will make him not hungry every 3 years. But then she also, like, tries to look into the future and see, like, is there a way, like, we can put this creature to rest? And she sees, like, this future vision of Theseus. So, like, it's all these things where it's like, she's in a very uncertain place, but like she kind of like leaves it feeling very disillusioned about like her sister, who like accuses her of being like the same as her. She's like, Circe, I don't
Yeah, okay,
feel.
so they get into this really big fight,
Yeah,
which is one of my favorite parts of the book because it's so many layers. But like it's basically Circe goes to confront her because she's like, why the hell am I here? If you could have really just done this yourself, because you knew that you have your own powers, and then also you did this on purpose. And then you kind of realize, even if she's like speaking in such horrible like terms, like she's still insulting Circe this whole time, but she's also kind of bearing her soul and saying all these things about their life, their quote unquote childhood. And she basically admits that she was suffering the whole time and she was really unhappy, even if Circe didn't know it or didn't even see it at all.
right.
And
Pasiphae.
Pasiphae was basically saying all these things like Aetes has never loved a woman in his life. And she kind of also insinuates that she and Percy had to, or like she had to do certain things for Percy, or else he would like be really
For
cruel to her. Percy, sorry, to unless or he'd be really cruel to her. And then she eventually says, or like she likens Circe to herself, and she says that, they are not like us. And that's what like gets Circe annoyed because she's like, okay, like inside she's like, I'm really sorry that you were feeling like this, but it's not like you tried to be my friend either. And so she tells her sister as much, and she's like, I am not like you. And then that's it. They never see each other again after that.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because like you really see that like this woman was like suffering her whole life.
Right. Like her estimation of Pasiphae like changes, but in a way that also negatively like
Changes
worsens her affection, her sort of sense of herself. Like there's no way that she and I are the same. And yet I can't help but feel like some sense of sympathy for what she's feeling.
Right. Yeah,
because these are the feelings I felt all along.
Yes. And it's really sad because like in her mind also, like this like in the chapter after, like a chapter or two after, where she's thinking about Pasiphae again, and she's like, man, I could have had a sister this whole time.
Yeah.
I could have had a friend.
And the thing that underlines that, like a few chapters later,
is
that when she gets back to her island, she gets visited by the children of Aeetes. The daughter of Aeetes, Medea.
Yeah.
Who turns out to also have like witchcraft powers. And like you can already see like, oh, okay, there's this sense that Circe already sees a lot of herself in Medea. But Medea is now facing the situation where she and Jason have escaped from Aeetes, from Colchis, and Aeetes is now pursuing them, and she doesn't want to go back to Aeetes. And like Circe is like appealing to her this like in saying like, no, I know my brother. He's actually a good guy. Like if you go to him, he will accept you and he'll take care of you and it'll be fine.
And Medea's like, no.
Yeah, you don't know.
Really don't know him at all.
And like it's very confusing to her until like Medea and Jason escape, and then Aeetes soon shows up after, and that's when she realizes, whoa, fuck, they weren't kidding. Whoa.
Yeah, like he is not who I knew.
Yeah.
Or like not who I thought.
He's clearly not the affectionate, inquisitive child that she had grown up knowing. And in fact, like she's like doubting even if that memory was actually even accurate. Because then you could also see it as him being secretly cunning.
Manipulative
to her, exactly.
Yeah.
And like kind of like preying on her pity.
That like emphasizes also her own realization of like how long she's been so quote unquote innocent.
Yeah.
Because by the time that Medea comes, it should have been like decades since the Minotaur.
Yeah.
But she probably doesn't feel that,
right.
Again, because of where she is.
One thing sort of to gloss over also from there is that it's in that whole episode on Crete that she also forms a relationship with Daedalus,
Oh,
where
hells yeah.
the thing between them is like they have a brief, and they have a brief tryst, but then
I thought you were
but
a brief encounter.
yeah, I was going to say that, but then the thing about them is that I don't know if she necessarily falls in love with him. She definitely
She's definitely
admires him.
attracted to
No,
him.
there's
And she's
something about it.
definitely like
I
there's
think
this
she's
part where
attracted.
she
She's attracted to him, but respectfully.
yeah. And I was gonna say, I think it's also like a whole maternity thing, or like a maternal thing too, because it doesn't solidify until she meets Icarus
Yeah,
that she's kind of like,
yeah. So
oh, what
she
the
meets the
hell is
son.
he, like a zaddy?
She meets.
And then she even says, I had never thought about children of my own until this moment.
Yeah, and she sort of realizes like, whoa, okay, wait, the whole thing about Daedalus is shifted because she hadn't been imagining that he had a son. And so
Yeah.
she's like wondering, why are you even staying here in Crete? You can leave literally anytime. And it's only when she
Yeah.
sees that Daedalus has this son that she's like, oh, okay, I kind of get it now. Like,
yeah.
you're literally staying
You're
here.
bound here.
Yeah, because like if you go, his life is just going to be like this running life of pursuit that is not going to be great. So like,
Yeah.
and as she does later find out, like the famous myth about Icarus and Daedalus is that they're flying with like wax candle wings, and he flies too close to the sun, and then he falls into the ocean and dies. So
Yep,
there's that whole
happens.
thing. That whole thing happens. So she has that whole thing on Crete. She goes back home. Daedalus has gifted her this loom, which is
The loom.
a very.
Loom. Isn't it referenced in Odyssey?
Yes, it's a very prominent loom.
In Odyssey she does her prophecies on that? Did I make that up?
I don't know about prophecies. I just know that
Oh.
she definitely like is using that loom. Like that loom features prominently in sort of the iconography surrounding Circe. She I think at that point she sort of realizes that her loyalty is more with man at that point than it is with gods or with titans. Like
Yeah.
she feels like if there's any hope in the world, it must be with these mortals who probably value life more than the gods do because they're mortal. They only they she
They only have so much time.
no, she literally says Tolo. They only live once.
And what did you say? Oh, okay. I was like, what is this stand for?
So like for them, like, surely they must value life more. And very quickly she's proven wrong because then she's visited by this one group of men.
Medea.
No.
Oh no, I thought
I
thought you were gonna say Medea and Jason because she when she meets Jason, she's super like annoyed already.
No, yeah. I mean, but the part later on where she gets visited by this group of sailors whom she's like very happy to host.
Oh yeah.
And like she thinks like, okay, if I show my good nature to them, like they'll respond kindly, and for a while they do until they find out that there is no lord in the house, that she's sort of the master of the house. And that sort of gives them the idea that we should take advantage of her. So the captain basically assaults her. From there,
she turns them all into pigs.
Yeah, she starts turning them into pigs, and
which is the most satisfying scene ever.
And like it's really like visceral, like she really...
No, but it is very difficult to read.
Yeah, no. But I mean, like what I mean is that the scene of the pigs transformation. Like she really, Madeline really goes to the length of describing how like the sound of the bones.
Yeah, okay, that's the great part of it. Like she doesn't really say what happens like in terms of the assault, but like she practically glosses over that and then is like, and then this is what Circe does.
Yeah.
This is how they transform.
Right. Yeah, because like there was a part of me that wasn't even clear. Like I had to read it a couple of times. Like where it's like
I agree.
I could see
that
like
part,
his skin is pressing against her skin, but then he lets her go.
And then she says, "Pa, if I were mortal, I would have passed out."
Yeah, which is
or
like
something like that.
Yeah, very concerning. But then she Madeline gives it the time to like describe the transformation, which is something that she then carries out over the next few years. Anytime sailors pass through her island or they arrive on her island, she like hosts them for a while and then like tricks them into drinking her wine, and then she turns them all into pigs. And that goes on. That keeps going on and on and on and Until
Indeed.
a little old prophecy comes
A
back
little prophecy.
into the play because
Hells yeah.
Odysseus finally arrives, and he's the only one who doesn't fall.
Turn into.
Yeah, he doesn't fall sort of to the whims of. Well, okay, as we explained before, like he's already taken the Molly route. He's been warned by Hermes, so he kind of knows what's up, and he arrives to Bernadette Peters' early 90s Circe, and
I hate this.
and she like okay. Here's the thing. So like, let's like take stock of her relationship so far. Glaucus, clearly one-sided. She doesn't. She didn't really know who he was. She didn't really know what she was doing.
Nothing ever happened.
Nothing ever really happened. And yeah, he probably he didn't like her. You know, like he saw her as a sister. That was what he was saying.
Yes.
Which is like, oh.
And also, they weren't allowed to bone down anyway.
Yeah.
Because her Lola said so.
So so there's that. Daedalus, this relationship is like, as we said, sort of like something that's born out of like admiration and respect. Like, how could you like live your life like this? It's so sensual. So like
okay,
like I mean, like this cannot go on, but at least for tonight, let it go on. With Odysseus, it's right away the energy is super different.
You did not even mention Hermes, but okay.
Oh yeah, I completely like glossed over because I didn't count him anymore. It's like,
oh okay.
To me, he was like a one-night stand that happened over many nights.
He's a multiple one. He's our FUBU.
Yeah, he is. He very much is.
He actually is.
Like so, Odysseus.
He's super hot in my head, by the way.
The thing is, okay. So Odysseus. The thing about Odysseus that I sort of like registered right away is that when they're talking for the first time, that scene where like they're kind of like doing all these witty repartees towards each other, and he's very like casual and open to her about like his thoughts and feelings. So he's very confident.
And his wife.
Whoops. like it sort of like drives this point that what makes the appeal of Circe and Odysseus as in their relationship, at least in Circe's mind, is that she can sort of envision them almost as equals. Like, Odysseus doesn't look down on her in any way, and at the same time, like, he kind of like counts on her.
He still respects her as a
basically
goddess too.
Yeah. Or not. I mean, like, it's sort of different from the respect
as a divinity
he would give to her as a divinity. He like sort of respects her as if she's like his best mate in the war. Like if she's his Patroclus, like she's like he's like ready to make quips and sort of like throw like a jestful side eye to her, and she's like, "Who is this guy?" and that really endears.
And how do I get to bone him?
Yeah, that endears her to him so much that she keeps them around for a year. But at the same time, she is very conscious already of the fact that he does have a yearning for his home, his life. That he keeps talking about Telemachus. He keeps talking about his Penelope wife as being this very steady, loyal star. And, you know, like, that's something that I remember Madeline was saying as well, is that for her, Odysseus is really the only character that she sees in the Greek epics who really respects women. Because, like, the way, like, she cited this one
and
scene.
also gays.
Like, she cited there's this one scene that happens towards the end of the Odyssey where when Odysseus comes back home and he's disguised as an old man by Athena, Penelope comes out and she's finally like, okay, you know what, you guys have been waiting 10 years. I'm gonna finally consider marrying one of you, but the catch is you have to give me even more stuff. And like the way Madeline was like describing it is that most men would like look at that and say, why that she this disloyal, you know, like she like all these scornful things. But like the way Odysseus reacts when he hears her say that is he's like, this son of a bitch, I can't believe she fucking, you know, like she like he thinks like she's just as cunning as I am, and I cannot wait to get out of this old man prosthetic.
old man costume, and so I can like totally this
Yeah.
old man prosthetic is what you just said.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't wait to get off my end game Steve,
Yeah.
old man Steve get up.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Um,
Yeah.
she basically tells him, okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have to, the whole thing about having to go to the underworld, you have to see Tiresias.
Oh, also another Apollo cameo.
Right, that's true.
Because she receives that prophecy through Apollo.
Yeah. So he goes off, and when he comes back, he's like totally dazed, like, oh, Jesus, what did I just see?
Like, this
Like,
was like the worst thing.
I literally
saw literally all my friends.
Yeah, I saw literally everyone.
All my friends.
Yeah, and
our pals Achilles and Patroclus.
Yeah, and
Ajax.
Right. And what's the thing that happens after that?
And then he leaves again.
He
doesn't stay.
He leaves again, but then there's another thing. No, she sort of warns him of the dangers that he's supposed to pass, and all of those are like the main adventures that he then has to go through in the Odyssey, like the island of the sacred cows of Helios, Scylla, the sirens. So she like sort of like warns him, like, this is what's ahead of you. And
and she tells him how to defeat all of them, basically.
Right. And it's like literally after,
which is the rest of the Odyssey,
right? And it's literally after he leaves that the narrative makes explicit. Oh, by the way, she is pregnant. Like Circe is totally pregnant with Odysseus' child.
Yeah. Which is one of the greatest reveals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you kind of forget also that she's been taking godly birth control ever since she started like boning Hermes. I do remember that even there was a whole scene about her making the birth control.
Right.
Do you remember that? And then like, and then she never mentions it again until Odysseus leaves, because she's leaving, and then he's leaving, and then she mentions something that's like, and then I didn't take this flower that I haven't been taking since Hermes. And I was like, what? Like, you forget about it. Like, I do remember rereading that and being like, what the hell is she talking about? Oh my god, it's her pill! Circe really said reproductive rights.
Yep. So,
anyway, so yeah, she's pregnant.
She's pregnant, and
like, she has a really violent...
Yeah, she C-sections herself.
I was gonna say, even before that, like, her entire pregnancy, like her going into term, is really aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, she vomits literally every day. She has never been sick in her life.
Yeah, and like obviously. Sort of the servants who have been sent there by all these other gods who kind of think that they can send their daughters to her island. They like are all scared, so like they go like, oh shit, what's going on here?
Because they've also never been sick, so they're kind of like, what's going on?
Yeah, but eventually she does a C-section on herself, and the baby's born alive. And she names the child Telegonus. And the thing about him is that he's like a very difficult infant to raise. But
all he does is yell.
Yeah, but then she like also realizes like, no, I'm now so in love with this child. Like it's one of those things like you hear a lot from like women who become mothers. That it's sort of instantaneous for them, that when they see their child for the first time, or there's a moment early on with their child where they're looking at them and they realize like,
and they're like, oh, this is the greatest person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. And that is immediately threatened by Athena, because she finds out like there are all these like suddenly these animals who are coming to like basically almost hurt the child, and she has to protect the child. And she finds out that Athena is at the root of it all. She like wonders from Athena, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to kill my son? And like Athena's very vague about it, but she's like, no, you're gonna regret it when you get older. Like, whatever happens, you must not let this child live. And like she even like goes to the length of saying, like, look, here's the deal. If you let me kill Telegonus, if you let me kill your baby boy, I will send your sweet baby boy. I'll send another man to this island. You can have as many, and then you can have another baby. And so she's like very uncompromising. She's like, hell no, like I'll keep this baby.
She's like, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
No, I want this child.
And like it brings her to this point of cautiousness where she says like, okay, here's what I gotta do. I now have to cast all these spells over this island because Athena knows by the fates prophecy that she cannot kill Telegonus herself, so she must employ other means to kill Telegonus. Which for Circe is like convenient because then she can cast all the spells that she wants. And she has like two very important strong spells that she casts in particular that protect the island from Athena the whole time through.
Mm-hmm.
So time passes, she's continuing to protect Telegonus from Athena, and eventually, like, from being a difficult child, Telegonus turns into, again, this sort of inquisitive but like sort of more manageable child. And eventually when he turns 16, she's like, okay, now's the time you find out about your father. And he's like, okay, so when can I meet him? And she's like very reluctant about that because she knows that obviously Odysseus didn't know that she was pregnant, and the one thing Odysseus wanted in life was to be reunited with his family. So if ever he had to go and Telegonus had to go and see Odysseus, Telegonus would then have to deal with the reality of the fact that he's basically a bastard son.
Yeah.
But she decides, like, no, okay, he's basically going to be a man, and I think like sort of she like finds a way to reason around it. Like, the best plan that I can plan is planning around what he wants also. So she says, okay, you can go, but I'm gonna set these conditions. You have to wait a few days. You have to treat Odysseus' family with the utmost respect. Then the last condition that she poses is something that she kind of has to do herself, where she basically goes into the deep ocean and she finds this creature named Trigon, who's basically a giant stingray, and she bargains with Trigon to...
He's like the god of the bottom of the ocean, right?
I feel like he's just like basically the dad of the stingray from Finding Nemo.
Wow. Okay.
He's not the god of the ocean. Like, that's Poseidon.
Isn't he?
He's Poseidon. That's Poseidon, wouldn't it be?
No, not of the ocean, but like of like the bottom of the ocean.
Would that?
Oh my god, that was my understanding. Anyway,
possibly.
whatever.
Anyway, so
Greek.
Trigon.
So
she gets the tail from Trigon, and like it's one of those things where like Trigon makes this bargain with her, like, if you get it, you're gonna have to experience eternal pain all your life. And she's like, fine, I'm willing to do it. It's like, fine, you have to battle me for it. She's like, fine, I'm willing to do it. And like it's only
like all these things, and
it's only like when he sees her reach out for him that Trigon realizes, oh shit, she's serious. She's like, okay, you can have the tail. And like he warns her,
just
like,
give it back.
Like, here's the thing: if you touch the poison on the tail, like, for you as an immortal, like, you won't die, but it's gonna hurt a lot. Now, but if you're immortal, if you touch this, instantly you will die. So she's like, okay, cool. Not like that's gonna matter to me anyway, but she like cautions like Telegonus about it. And he goes and he sets off and he goes to Ithaca. And literally in the next chapter, he comes back and he's like, yeah, shit got fucked up.
Yeah, so, yeah, he's like, hey mom, it's me.
So what Telegonus basically reports is like, so here's what happened, is that when I got off the boat, Dad saw me, and like I was like really happy to see him, but he was not so happy to see me. And then he just like started running at me, and I got scared because he did that thing where, when you put your hands out to kill a person, and I kind of sidestepped him. He got my spear, and he accidentally touched the tip. He touched the tip.
Yeah. He touched the tip. Just the tip.
Yeah.
He did touch just the tip.
And he died. And that's not all.
Yes.
I brought his wife and his son along with me. So they're here, right?
And then they're like, hey.
So
actually, all this whole time that you've been describing it this way, I did just imagine it like a sitcom, and it's hilarious.
I actually kind of would, like, okay, like in the same vein. So I mentioned this in the previous episode, but didn't really talk about it, that I've been playing Hades, which is a very, very fresh, very interesting reinvention also of Greek mythology. And I almost kind of wish, like, I yearn for other, like, sort of fresh reinventions in this manner, and that could be easily one of them, is the sitcom where it's like, like, it's like two women, two sons, one dad, but he's dead.
All right.
Saturday on ABC.
But one dad, but he's dead.
One dead dad. Anyway,
All right.
it's or okay, dead, but the
Two dad, no, two sons, one dad. I don't know.
We're trying so hard. We should mention we're recording this at like 1:30 in the morning, guys. Okay,
Is it? Oh, it's 1:30.
Explain anything. So, one dead dad.
I feel so crazy. Okay.
So they're basically spending time together. It really sounds like a sitcom, but like it's one of these. It's like the spirit of revelation where, okay, Circe senses that something's up. Penelope, the wife of Odysseus, has brought herself and Telemachus here for a reason, but she's not being clear about it. At the same time, she like starts asking Penelope, so like, you know, how was he? You know, I really missed him.
Like, what'd you do?
And like, yeah, she asked like,
how
Telemachus,
was
like,
he?
how was he? What was he like? And like Telemachus and Penelope are like, yeah, he got pretty shitty at the end. You know, he was not a cool guy. Like he would always like kind of boast about how he wanted to kill everyone. Like what you're saying is not directly contradicting my experience of the man that we love.
My experience with him.
But it's also making me realize that he was like quite a dick.
He was so traumatized, yeah.
And like in a funny way that kind of rubs off on her again. Because if she saw him as an equal, then that means I really have just been a dick this whole time too.
Yeah. This whole time, yeah.
Yeah. But then eventually she manages to get the truth out of Penelope that, well, okay, Odysseus had a very close relationship with Athena, and now that Odysseus is dead, Athena is now seeking an heir to accept the patronage that Athena was giving to Odysseus. And so now, because Telemachus was supposedly the heir of Ithaca, it has to go to him. And Penelope is basically buying time so that she can stay with Telemachus as long as she can, because she knows that neither of them want to do this. Neither of them want to go where Athena wants to go or do what she wants with Telemachus.
Right.
And eventually, like, she kind of holds that off as long as she can, to the point where, like, eventually, like, she does have to tell him, because, like, Hermes shows up and says, I have a message coming from Athena. And like that's basically what kind of like causes all the whole thing to unravel. And Penelope like kind of makes amends with Telemachus and says, okay, here's what's up.
Yeah.
And Circe tells Hermes like, okay, I'm willing to let down the barriers on the island so that Athena can come here, but give me time. And she's using that to kind of like get her, she's playing her cards basically. She knows that she has some leverage against Athena. Now, the thing that happens though is that the very second that she takes down the barrier, she realizes, oh shit, of course, this is literally Athena's plan all along. The minute that the barrier comes down, she can kind of just come down anytime she wants. And she does. Mm-hmm. So Circe literally rushes back to her home, where she finds like Athena in like full battle armor. The whole thing is that she wants to claim Telemachus as her champion so that he can conquer the kingdom that Aeneas, the only survivor from Troy, has set up in what will then become Rome.
Yeah.
And the idea is that Telemachus doesn't want it.
Because he's like, I saw what that did to my dad.
Yeah. And so
I don't want that.
She declines it. He declines it, and like literally to the point Athena's like, wait, are you serious? You're gonna lose like my patronage. And like Telemachus is like, yeah, dude, I guess that's how it's gonna have to be. And she's like, fine.
Go. And also, that's weird that she said that, because it's not like they had it for a while anyway.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like, I mean, because she wasn't really taking care of Odysseus.
Well, no.
So why would
Athena?
But was she? Yeah.
No, yeah. Athena is legit. Like, Odysseus is like God, like her main god. Like the reason...
No, I know. But then, like, when in the time that she was not protecting him, was she still protecting his family?
Yes, like to the point that literally.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, like the Odyssey starts with Athena.
Oh, okay, and then never mind. I take back what I just said.
Telemachus and saying like, okay, here's how you find your dad. So she's like really the family's patron god.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
and like so Telemachus sort of declines, and she's like, "Fine, you'll never get help from me again." And and she sort of turns around and she sees Telegonus. It's like, "Well, what about you? I'll give you a chance. Do you want to do this whole thing?" And the thing about Telegonus is he actually really wants to do it. Like some part of him has that aspect of Odysseus that is yearning for adventure, yearning for the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like Circe like kind of her rationale for it is like, look, he's the one who can now make his own decisions in the same way that Telemachus is allowed to make his decision and say no. I have to kind of give Telegonus the option to say yes. And this is sort of the part that really moved me because like the whole arc of the novel then becomes like, this is the story of a person who, when she was young, people made decisions. People made decisions that affected her directly or indirectly, and she had no say in them. And all she could feel was like scorn and disgust for the world. And now here's the one person that she loves the most in her life making a decision that she allows herself to have no say in over. And even if he makes the decision that will hurt her the most, that's the decision that she has to come to accept. And like that was the one, like that was the moment for me where like the whole book like really kind of clicked into place. It's like, whoa, like you see this story of this person who has now like reclaimed herself by process of growth. And like it suddenly made sense for why the book had to take as long as it did, or had to go through like the pace that it went through, which is always sort of my gripe with books that have a somewhat slow pace, is that they do go through a lot of thoughts and feelings and interiority and experiences, but at the end,
they don't really round it out.
But no, the opposite is that a lot of them, like especially the best ones, like really pay off. And this is one good example.
I get what you mean now.
I felt like at the end of it, it's like, oh, thank God I stuck through, because like I now have this like intensely moving moment where she decides to like let her son go, even though she's been like literally protecting him from the moment he was born. And it just goes to show how much things have changed for her and how much time has changed for her, that she's able to make that decision. And I mean, like, at least come to a situation of peace with it, where she's able to manipulate the circumstances enough that she can do something about it. Because after Telegonus leaves, I will say I also don't cry a lot in books, but I very nearly.
Oh, did you cry?
No,
did you?
I was like, is this it? Is this the moment? I very nearly felt myself on the verge of tears when she hugged him for the last time. And it was one of those things where she like kind of described it as sort of like,
that was such a good,
like kind of like not wanting to like squeeze him so tightly or so hard, but it felt like becoming one with him almost. Like I'm not getting the quote right, but like that's what the idea of that image felt like. And I was like, shit, this is too good. This book is
I
so
super feel
good.
you. I really also remember reading this for the first time before and being like, wow, this is like, because you really feel the 1,000 years, you know.
It's not a decision that comes out of power or like vengeance or spite, but really like out
or
of,
like it's not like she knew also what would happen.
Yeah, but like out of like
it's
this
not like she knew that would be wrong.
It's a decision that comes out of this very total acceptance of this other person. Like saying like I won't necessarily agree with what you're about to do here, but I know that if you do it, you will have it in you to like get what you want out of it, basically.
Yeah.
So there was a lot about it that was really moving to me. And like from then on, it just keeps like continuously escalating, because then you have this whole like sort of endgame sequence where she decides like, okay, you know what? It's like what I told Trigon, like I'm sick of this world. And then she basically remembers what he had told her, what Trigon had told her, like, look, if you're sick of this world, then you can change it. And that kind of gives her an idea. So she sets off on this one last quest where the first thing she does is she asks Helios to lift off her exile. And like she makes this very stern demand, like, look, the most that you can do for me is to lift my exile because I'm your daughter. And
Yeah.
like he basically is like very reluctant about like giving into that, and he like even threatens her like, well, you if you get
Yeah.
out of this exile, like you better not like screw shit up for me because
She's like,
like
start shit.
because I'm gonna disown you. And she's like, disown me already.
And she's like, what?
Then then do
Yeah.
it.
Or she's gonna be like, disown me, you never cared.
Yeah. So
What's the difference?
Like that's stage 1. Then stage 2 is she then goes off to find. She goes off sailing with Telemachus, with whom she like develops a relationship, which I'm like, like I was like mentioning.
Okay, which was one of the greatest twists.
Like, I
of like this whole thing.
I mean, like I'd seen that they were gonna get together, like in the old canon.
You see it.
But then like sort of the way that they come together, I'm like, dude, he's so much younger than you.
I mean, and then it makes you think back to that time when she had just met Glaucus and she was like, I met Prometheus, and he was like, what? How is that possible? Because you're my age.
I mean,
and she's like, no, I'm not.
Like I didn't.
And he gets freaked out.
I didn't think so much of the time that she met Glaucus as I thought of the time that she met Odysseus, his dad.
Oh yeah, his father. Yeah. Oh. Right. And also she boned him.
Very surprising thing to happen. But so basically, and like he accompanies her on a journey where she's on her way back to the old island where the pharmakeia flowers are growing. On the way, she decides, I'm going to finish what I started. She basically is able to kill Scylla. They pass her for the last time and she kills Scylla. They get the flowers. They come back to the island, Aiaia. And Penelope is like forming now her own penchant for witchcraft. And it's one of those things where it's like,
which is also great.
It's like I never realized it, but it was sort of planted there all along. Because like okay, to be honest, like when we earlier mentioned Circe's loom, I didn't really know her loom. I didn't really remember that part of the iconography so well. The one I remembered was that Penelope had a loom because that was the one that she used to like make the suitors believe that she was
that's
like,
right. Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
So the thing is, like, I like it sort of made me realize, like, oh, they have planted it here that Penelope basically can get a lot out of this relationship, this friendship with Circe. And it's to the point where Circe sees, like, you really have a natural knack for this thing. What if I let you become the witch of Aiaia? And, like, Penelope is like, yeah, shit, I'll do it. Like, you can see, like, this is a new life for her. And it's, like, genuinely exciting. And I'm like, I'm so pumped for this. And like
I know, me too. I was like, don't you want to read that though? Wouldn't you want to see what she what she learns too?
Maybe that's like the sequel, the spin-off sequel.
I know, the spin-off,
but like the
miniseries.
The whole time, the nature of what Circe is planning is kind of made somewhat ambiguous. I kind of had to like let it off for a while because like I had a sense of what the plan was going to be, and it's by the time you get to the end of the book, she doesn't really even say what the plan is explicitly, but the book expects you to know by then.
Or like the closer she is to doing the thing, it should be like you should have already figured it out. Also,
definitely. And like I think when I figured it out, I was like, oh, this book just went from good to great for me.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
This is like...
So basically what happens is that you have this whole last chapter, which I think is a really excellent, stellar ending chapter for the book. Because
it's just the two of them, right?
It's just the two of them, but then she basically has this dream of the future. And it's a future in which she and Telemachus have kids. But it's also a future in which the consequences that she had feared become inconsequential, because then she and Telemachus are able to sail around the world as they had dreamed, and they're able to sail to Italy, and they meet again Telegonus, and Telegonus gets to meet the daughters of Circe and Telemachus. So it's like this very like I thought immediately of one of the ending scene of Phantom Thread, where a very similar thing happens.
Right.
She fantasizes the future with Daniel Day-Lewis, and it's like this very dreamlike, feverish, like we're gonna go through the mundanities of life, but we'll also end up doing all the things that we want to do. And the way the book ends is that she puts a potion to her lips and she drinks. And the assumption,
and then
I mean, like we might as well say what it is. Like
she's mortal.
Yeah, she makes herself mortal. Because like for her, like
which wow,
like what was it? She said something like the thing about being a god is that when you're a god, it's worse than never dying, or it's worse than dying, because you never change.
It's worse than dying because
you never change, you never grow, and like it's that whole sense of why the idea of immortality is so scary. And like again, that blew my mind, because then it added this whole other layer to the book, which is that this book has also just been like an indictment of that kind of godly privilege.
Why to like live your life? Oh, okay. We were thinking different things.
Yeah, no, I was like, for me, it's like,
yeah,
again, like all these things that you'd want for yourself that you think are status symbols or material symbols, they will not really mean anything in the end. They're just vanity. So, like for her, that's a faith worse than death. Which I was like, hell yeah.
And you might as well like become mortal and live the rest of your life with the one person who sees you as, you know, what you are and accepts you and does that thing that you were just talking about, where like she totally accepts her son and lets him go. At the end, she has Telemachus who accepts her for who she is.
Yeah.
And would be happy to also spend, I guess, his days with her.
Yeah. It's the thing also, like, there are so many things about it that feel like allusions as well to, okay, like, I'm, like, the more I think about it...
Humanity?
I was gonna say allusions to, like, Lord of the Rings. Or, like, sort of, like, parallels between it, because, like, you have this thing... So, like, I was thinking about when I was reading a book, which is, like, it's this whole thing about the argument about humans and mortals... where like in Lord of the Rings, like humans are seen as the weakest race. In fact, they're so weak they literally got fooled by like Sauron into accepting rings, right? And then
Sauron,
like,
I know.
but like the implication of Lord of the Rings is that men will be the last race to live in Middle Earth, so they're gonna be the ones who ultimately have to take care of it. And like the book like Lord of the Rings starts out on this idea that should strike you as sad, but then by the end, it should strike you as hopeful that men are going to be the ones left behind to take care of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it again, this is also like basically what happens.
That's like that also, right?
I was going to say like also the Aragorn Arwen thing, where like if Arwen stays with Aragorn, she's not going to be an elf anymore, or like she's going to lose like her elf aura,
right?
Diba?
Yeah.
So,
or
like,
her elf head, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, illusions.
Interesting.
As Robert Pattinson would say if he were a lit teacher.
Stop.
Illusions.
Okay. All right.
And that's Circe.
And that's Circe. That's Madeline Miller.
Yeah. Okay. As you can tell, obviously, as I said, I really love this book. I love it way more than Song of Achilles. Like
I do too.
I quite like Song of Achilles.
Yeah, I did too.
But the thing about this book is that it went somewhere else for me that I feel like I'm gonna carry with me for a while. And that's not something I expected.
I'm so happy for you.
That's not something I expected from this book, because I always feel like retellings have such a difficult task upon them, because they're treading ideas that have already been, tread upon. But then at the same time,
for like so long.
Yeah, but then at the same time, that's the whole appeal of the Homeric epics, is that those were stories that people had known for so long. Yeah,
which is what we said last time.
Yeah, and yet, like, it was the telling, as Leon said. It was the way that it was told that people remembered and thought, like, this is particularly excellent. And I think that's true, at least.
And then also...
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and also like what we were saying before, is that because it's been so long, and also because it's recorded in such a specific way, there's such a large flexibility to it
Yeah.
that Madeline 100% took advantage of, more so here than she did in Song of Achilles, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think she was able to play that advantage. Sorry, she was able to play that obscurity of Circe as a character to her advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I mean, I was like looking at up afterwards, and like I realized like, oh, actually,
there's hardly anything.
no, not no. Well, there are things, but like they're even
Small.
more obscure. Like apparently,
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Circe and Odysseus had more kids. So like,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't even know
and
that.
like, and like all three
Yeah.
of them go to Rome. So like for me, it was like,
Oh.
okay, there is an aspect of this that is known, but she was counting on me not to know that Odysseus and Circe have kids, so that she could introduce and like invest time into this one relationship that she has with presumably one kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I was gonna say also that I really distinctly remember the first time I read it, I was like, I mean, obviously now reading it a second time, and after all the things that you said, I was like, oh yeah, that's what it's about. You know, it's about like everything you just said. Sorry, I'm like, the time of night is like getting to me now. What I wanted to say is that the first time I read it, I was like, oh, this book is basically about men ain't shit.
Yeah.
And and that was really great. But you know, reading it a second time was super joyful, and it makes me sad that this didn't really get that much attention compared to Song of Achilles.
Right. Like, would you attribute that to? Because like, okay, we were saying, like as we said several times already, like, you know, with Song of Achilles, like a big part of that was like coming out of fandom culture and sites like Tumblr. But like, like 2017, by 2017, 2018, like those
we
had migrated outwards. Like they weren't as popular anymore on like Tumblr, at least as a platform.
Or if it was, I did not see it at all.
Yeah.
And I hardly saw it on Twitter.
Like I felt like for you it was more like you had kind of stuck on, as it were, the brand
just waited
name.
For her.
Yeah, like the brand name of Madeline Miller is like anything she puts out, absolutely. You'll pick it up.
Yeah, which I think everyone did know, because like this book was still a bestseller, right? I think it still ended up being a bestseller, but I don't think it was for as long as the Song of Achilles was. Right? Did I make that up? Are you checking?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were checking. I'm trying to check also because
chances are it were. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Had to.
Yeah, I don't doubt that it it did good, but obviously it didn't get the kind of attention that after I had read it, I was like, come on, like we're all gonna be talking about this. Like it was to the point that I remember when I had started at my job at the time, like literally my job last year. I had met people who had read Song of Achilles at my work, and I was like, yeah, and Circe was so great, right? And they had not gotten around to it.
Well, where did they get Song of Achilles?
They were also Tumblr kids.
Okay, they were Tumblr kids. Okay.
Yeah, they were like me. But they had not read Circe, and I was really shocked. It's like, guys, actually, I literally don't know anyone else personally who also had read Song of Achilles and then read Circe after. Like when I was telling my friends also about this miniseries, I had a lot of people be like, "Oh, I haven't even read Circe." And I was like, guys, come on.
I mean, like that's ultimately the big appeal I have for this book is that, I mean, like we should have said it almost on the top of the episode, but if you haven't read Circe already, like obviously you definitely should.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, and well, that's our ratings then.
Here's sort of the alarming thing is that, like, or not really alarming, but like sort of like intriguing thing is that I remember I was looking at what accolades it had gotten, and the most interesting one that I'd seen was that Paste magazine had compiled a list of the most important books or the best books of the 2010s last year. And number 1 they had given to Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Number 2 they gave to Circe.
Number 2 was this?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was, for me, it was like, whoa, this, I don't know what the other like book rankings or anything like gave to it, but
Yeah.
the fact that like
But that she's on
one of these like big magazines saw
Yeah.
the opportunity to say, no, you know what, we're gonna call our shot. This is number 2,
Mhm.
the best of the
Yeah,
decade,
agree.
and this is again higher than like I'm like
Sally's
Karen-
stuff too, and
Swamplandia was there,
and
and I loved.
okay,
I
yeah.
read Swamplandia by
Yeah,
Karen
you read
Russell
that.
earlier this year. I really loved it,
Mhm.
and this was higher than that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other ones too that would have been.
I mean,
Anyway,
there were
but yeah, I get you.
yeah. So like for me, like
It's really sayang. I don't get why also.
I mean, like, okay, here's my only qualm though. It's like, okay, like if we were to say like it's required, like if it's required reading, I can't fully justify it in a framework of requirement in the same way that we've talked about like Sally Rooney's
that's
books.
interesting.
Where like, okay, like when we said that, or at least when I said that Normal People I thought was required reading, it came from like seeing how normal people like really fit into this kind of framework of the present, and like
Okay, I
capturing
think
sort
I'll
of the
answer this.
self-aware
Okay,
like mindset of
Right.
of like people today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like ultimately, what we could be just saying is that yet again our evaluation system is still flawed, which is fine because we're still growing. But then I wanna find a way to like justify like how does this fit in like a reading list or into coursework? Like where does this fit in?
What would Paste say?
Well, no, they were saying that it was. I mean, like they talked about how the retelling and how the evocative language brought out this
Right.
very compelling character from someone who was basically a side character in the Odyssey, which is the sentiment I've like heard echoed by very much everyone. But this is different in the sense that they assigned a ranking to it.
Yeah, they
Like,
gave it
hey, out of all the books,
number
this
2
actually
of
is number
like
2
the decade.
for the reasons that everyone says it's good.
Yeah, and I would do the same. Like I would, if we were to follow our traditional rankings. I would also say that this is required.
Mhm.
And but what I wanted to mention also when we got to this part is that I would recommend and require both this and Song of Achilles, no matter what your experience is with the epics. Like, I read Song of Achilles after I had read Iliad, and I read this, but I've never read the Odyssey.
Right.
And either way, they like affected me, and they really sat with me. And I feel like there's a case for that, going back to, you know, the flexibility of the original works, because and you know, that's what Madeline's trying to do with all these things. Like, she's just retelling them so that we can have better perspectives of stories that might have never existed. And I think that to a lot of people, that's like enough to get them to like read it, you know.
Yeah, because she's been quite conscious and like deliberate about that, like saying like there's this aspect of it where like with Song of Achilles, she really wanted to focus on like this narrative that would go against homophobia, and then with this one it's a narrative that would go it would be from a woman's perspective, and she always knew it was going to be first person. So you have all these things. I want to like recount, there's this one anecdote that she told where her classics professor, like she had never told the classics professor, who's like this very well respected scholar in the field, that she was writing a book about the Iliad. That she was writing basically a novel about the Iliad. And the only time she decided to tell him was when she was holding the final proof copy of Song of Achilles in her hands. Like the final proof, like it had already gone through the publishers and like it was ready to come out. And then that's when she finally called her mentor up, and she was so scared, and she was like, hey, so I wrote this book about Achilles and Patroclus, and the mentor was like, I hope you made them gay.
I was about to say, is he?
and
that's
she was
amazing.
Like, this whole time, that's what I wanted to hear. It's like, yes, I did. It's like, good for
also,
you.
I really feel like she wouldn't have told him
Yeah.
if she wasn't hoping or like thinking that this is definitely going to be his reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also we should say, when we were telling Leon about it as well, about
Like
some
we
of
had a
Achilles,
similar.
yeah, we had a similar situation where when he was recording his bit and he had called them friends, the two of us messaged each other while he was talking. And we were just like, oh my god, we gotta tell him that they're gay.
Very frantic.
And then, but it was great. Afterwards, he was totally like, oh, is this, it's because they're lovers? And we were like, yes, they are.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was great. That did validate me, though.
Right. Okay, well, I guess that we can close the book then on Madeline Miller.
Yeah.
That's another miniseries in the can.
Indeed.
I'm pretty excited now because like we've been basically doing this for a month, and like so far like we're still settling into like I guess our way of doing this, figuring out what's the best way to do this or ways to improve the show, and like continuously like add on things that hopefully will make the show better. But like one of the ways that we've decided to do that is even in the planning of our miniseries. So like when we started the show and said, okay, well, we'll do Sally Rooney. Like I was saying that coming out of my recent experience of her and me assuring you that, oh, hey, this is going to be easy to read. I think we can both get through this and get like an interesting conversation out of it.
And also because the miniseries.
Yeah, and also the miniseries, which you had seen bits of. So you were like, okay, I'd want to do this. And then when it came to Madeline Miller, like it was, I was saying like, I'm willing to meet you on this level now because I feel like it's an interesting thing that we can talk about where you get to tap into your experience of it and we also get to see new things about it together. So a little bit of it so far has been my comfort zone and then what's in your comfort zone.
And then, which is great.
Which is great because
that being said,
the third writer that we are going to cover is someone who is in neither
of us
of our comfort zones because we have not read majority of this writer's work.
We've read help me combined. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
combined, you and I have read 1.5 works.
Well, yeah, that's right. The thing is like we really wanted to take this as a challenge upon ourselves because to fill in this blind spot and also to be able to try to like coax out like an intelligent discussion of someone who we're still like getting the hang of. And we started reading the first book of this writer's bibliography, and like so far I don't know about you, but I'm quite liking it so far. Like I don't know how I managed to stay away from this writer this long, but
I feel
then
that.
again no one should really be surprised because this writer I think is pretty much like already a living legend at this rate. Like someone who has already been in the canon, like canonized and highly respected by the critics and by ordinary readers alike and scholars. So they have a very long and storied career and we can't wait to get into it. That being said, our next miniseries is on the books of Zadie Smith.
Hells yeah. Boo, 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 boo.
So
get ready for that.
I hope you can join us all for this ride, beginning with our next episode in 2 weeks on White Teeth. And this is the series that's going to take us all the way to next year because this is finally more than 2 books.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say. She's done a lot.
Yeah, so we're doing her novels.
Which we will get to.
We're doing White Teeth, Autograph Man, On Beauty, NW, Swing Time, and ending with Grand Union, her collection of short stories.
Yes.
So, I guess that's it. We basically cleared all the business for today, whatever time you're listening to this on.
Yeah, for us it's late.
It's 2 a.m.
It's 2 a.m.
We should be going to bed, guys. I feel like I'm waking up everyone in the house. All right, well,
it's okay.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you for this. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for listening, everyone, to the Req Room. If you like the show, please remember to consider giving us a rating, a review, or even subscribing if this is your first time to listen to the show. We're happy to hear from you on social media. We're on at the Req Room Pod. Req spelled R-E-Q. Or you could just look for the Req Room with Mandy and Mio, as you can already tell how it's spelled.
Yeah.
Mandy, do you have anything you want to leave the listeners on?
Read this book. I don't know. Yeah, I'm assuming, or if you haven't already, read it again. Tell more people to read it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's it.
And as always, Odysseus, son of Laertes.
Oh my gosh.
This is worse than the first time I did it.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing?
Hard pressed. You are dry as leaves in winter, but there is no arbor here.
What?
I tried to
What's happening?
I wanted to do a longer bit. I googled songs Bernadette Peters is best known for, and I realized I didn't know almost all of them.
Oh my god.
Anyway, that's it.
So what are you reading from now? I could not understand a word you were saying.
Nothing. I wasn't reading anything.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Alright.
Thanks for listening to The Req Room. This episode was edited by me. Our artwork is by Mandy. Our theme song is 64 Sundays by Twin Musicom, which is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution License. Check out more of their music at www.twinmusicom.org. For more updates on The Req Room, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Req Room Pod. Req spelled R-E-Q.